Shocking statement. The F-111 could descend into weather so thick you'd lose the horizon and let the radar fly the airplane. Not metaphorically. The terrain following radar drove the jet at low level while the crew managed the attack. We'll break down the safety margins, the altitude gates, and why the WSO's workload made side-by-side seating more than comfort. It was mission assurance. Then we'll connect it to real tasking in Desert Storm, where F-111Fs dropped a large share of laser-guided bombs. The payoff is precise. How radar, capsule, and paved tack formed a single, repeatable strike method. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Why would a combat jet deliberately drop into the roughest slice of the atmosphere? Because turbulence and cloud hit it from search radars, and because the F-111 could offload the hardest task, precision height control at high speed, to a machine that did not blink or fatigue when the altimeter unwound. The defining feature was the terrain following radar tied directly into the autopilot. You set a clearance above ground. 200 to 500 feet was common, and the system flew 480 to 540 knots regardless of daylight. The radar scanned ahead, assessed what was coming, and issued pitch commands so the jet would stay within that vertical bubble while still making time. It was therefore a speed and clearance contract. The crew picked the numbers, the box held them. That confidence did not arrive on day one. Early Vietnam sorties exposed structural and control issues under low-level loads, and later airframes suffered from aging avionics with mean time between failures that strained schedules. Crews had to decide when to let the computer fly at 200 feet. The answer lived in both software and discipline. Layers of limits, gates, and reversion paths that kept a bad input from cascading into a bad outcome. In plain terms, the control law looked forward, not down. The antenna swept a wedge ahead of the nose, built a terrain profile, and computed a climb or descent that preserved the commanded clearance plus a margin for sensor update rate. The computer then drove the autopilot in pitch. It enforced altitude gates so it would not chase small bumps, and it bounded G-loads and pitch rates so the jet stayed within structural and crew tolerance. If the next ridge rose steeply, the system planned to climb early enough to hit the top with the required buffer rather than waiting until the last second. Safety layers mattered. The crew could select hard ride or soft ride. Hard ride accepted higher G and steeper pitch rates to hold the set clearance tighter in rough air. Soft ride eased the response, trading a looser height band for comfort and structural margin. The display cued pull-ups in the pilot's sightline if the computed path exceeded limits, and a minimum floor, set above hard obstacles or tactical threats, prevented the computer from commanding below a known safe altitude. If the radar lost returns due to heavy precipitation or masking, the mode reverted to a stable attitude or initiated a climb, and it flagged the change. The WSO set the ride mode and the clearance number and watched the health lights. He managed the trade between speed, G, and clearance, while the pilot kept the stick within the small dead band the autopilot allowed. Think of it like adaptive cruise control with a terrain buffer, except the buffer is vertical and the penalty for stale data is lethal. So redundancy and mode discipline mattered. You did not mix modes casually, and you confirmed the revert actions before the first cloud wall. A PQ series terrain following sets, integrated with the inertial navigator, made time on target reliable in instrument conditions. The jet could hold a low line, arrive on schedule, and stay below main lobe coverage of long-range radars. Exposure windows shrank to brief pops when the nose rose to clear a ridge or to release. Survival, though, solved only half the mission. By this point, the airplane could carry you to the target area in weather at speed, but striking the right aim point at night required a second stabilized sensor and a second crew member to run it while the autopilot held the path. That is why TFR was revolutionary here. It turned low-level ingress from an art that depended on a single pilot's hands into a procedure you could brief, repeat, and audit, which compressed enemy reaction time. With the jet reliably riding 200 to 500 feet, the cockpit's attention shifted to sensors and weapons, and the side-by-side capsule with paved tack redistributed that workload in a way a single seat never could. If the jet was flying itself down in the weeds, why keep two people sealed in a capsule? Because the machine flew the path, but the mission still demanded hands and eyes to manage sensors, timing, and weapons while the world outside erased visual cues. The side-by-side layout was a systems choice. Shared displays, short verbal loops, and identical sightlines cut coordination lag at low level. The escape capsule wrapped both crew in one structure with its own environmental control. So ejection avoided wind blast and canopy risks that complicate high-speed, low-altitude escapes. It was therefore a survivability and workload decision bundled together. Precision at night in weather-stacked tasks that don't queue neatly. Navigation updates had to hold the inertial solution tight. The mapping radar needed mode changes as terrain and clutter shifted. The targeting sensor required search, handoff, and laser timing. Weapons needed consent, fusing and release logic checked against rules of engagement. Radios stayed busy with package calls and range clearance. One person could do all of that, but not with the same margin while the jet pulsed through a terrain following profile at speed. Roles split cleanly. The pilot guarded TFR and autopilot modes, watched energy state, and cross-checked terrain clearances with the set floor and ride parameters. Any system reversion or pull-up queue had to be caught immediately. The WSO ran the navigation, selected radar modes for the ground map, and controlled paved tack. The stabilized FLIR and laser turret fitted to late F-111F, keeping it bore-sighted, tracking, and ready to lace through release. Each action required crosstalk because a sensor change could force a flight path tweak, and a ride mode change could force a sensor tweak. Paved tack's workflow was methodical. First, the WSO searched with FLIR to acquire a thermal pattern consistent with the aim point. Then he designated and refined the track, stabilized it against aircraft motion, and verified range and aspect. The handoff to the release computer set the basket for timing. The laser had to fire within a window that kept the bomb seeker happy without revealing the line before weapon separation. At low altitude, masking loomed. Terrain rising ahead could clip the line of sight or force gimbal limits. So the WSO anticipated with small azimuth offsets or brief pop-ups, and he called any gimbal or rate exceedance that risked breaking track. The capsule added another layer beyond egress. It kept the crew in a quiet, pressurized, temperature-controlled space, which made long, night instrument flights less fatiguing. And it kept checklists, charts, and displays from turning into projectiles during violent maneuvering. The cost was weight and a recovery process that was more complex after separation. But the benefit in the F-111's intended regime was clear. During Desert Storm, F-111Fs with paved tack carried a large share of the laser-guided bomb workload at night. Low-level routing limited how often early warning radars saw them in their main lobes, and terminal options included a short pop or a masked run-in that only unmasked for seconds to release and lace. That combination, repeatable low-level ingress plus a stabilized designator, produced consistent weapon effects on fixed infrastructure. El Dorado Canyon, years earlier, showed both edges. The aircraft could reach far at night and arrive with precision options queued, but urban target identification under marginal sensor conditions proved difficult. The mission still underscored why the second crew member mattered. Finding, confirming, and holding a valid aim point in clutter demanded continuous sensor work while the pilot protected the flight path. By this point, the pattern is clear. Side-by-side seating tightened the loop. Paved tack closed the targeting chain, and the capsule preserved the crew in the regime the airplane lived in. So, with survivability and precision accounted for, the remaining variable is the airframe's geometry. The swing wing that let the jet launch heavy, run low and fast, then retract drag on egress. The Aardvark's reliability rested on a triad: terrain following radar that held altitude through weather, a side-by-side capsule that managed complexity, and paved tack that closed the targeting loop. It was therefore a repeatable all-weather precision method rather than a one-off stunt. Swing wing geometry enabled that profile, but later fly-by-wire controls reduced the need for variable sweep as seen across piers like the F-14 and the Tornado. We can now move on to why modern designs kept low-level performance while retiring the mechanism. When an aircraft normalizes night, weather, and low altitude, commanders launch more often. That frequency is how it outsmarted defenses.